You're listening to The Edge with Mark Thompson.
Welcome to the show. Does anyone not love the Russians? There's a new focus on these meetings with the Russians in the Seychelles. We talk about this Seychelles meeting, and we also talk about other Russian meetings. It seems as though everyone loves the Russians in this administration. And, you know, I'm going to be honest and tell you that I love the Russians. The Russian women are beautiful. The Russian men are these big, strong guys with kind of, you know, that stern look. But then when you actually speak with them, they're sweethearts. Unless you're the top guy, all right? I mean, I'm going to give you that the top guy is complicated in that dangerous way, in the way that he might have you jailed if you're lucky. If you're really a threat or he's really in a bad mood, he will have you killed. You know, people are probably saying the same thing about the U.S. You know, people are nice. The top guy's a little bit complicated and dangerous. I don't know if he'll have you killed. It's still early. I mention it because we do touch on a couple of Russian connects in our conversation with Michael Shure. Also, all the beauty of Stormy Daniels. And I'll ask Michael whether we really care about this Stormy Daniels story or whether we should. Yes, we'll get into the tariffs briefly. And two stories you may not have seen. The guy who was convicted of a $200 million fraud. And the details are amazing. The judge lets him do something, and it almost leads to him getting away with it. I mean, leaving the country. We'll get to that. That's all with Michael Shure, who is calling in from the road. The creator of Reno 911, Night at the Museum, did the Pacifier with Vin Diesel. He joins us. His name is Ben Garant, brilliant screenwriter and performer. We'll get into a conversation with him in this episode, joined by J Elvis Weinstein, whose movie I Need You to Kill is available now on Google Play and iTunes. It's about doing comedy in Asia. So check out J Elvis's movie. We'll also have a quick conversation with Sam Rubin about the Oscars and being on the red carpet and the weird Me Too moments, if there were any. But we start with the Fast 15, politics and more with Michael Shure. Thank you for being here. Thank you for subscribing on YouTube, on iTunes, on Stitcher, all the different places you can leave us positive reviews. Please do. It helps keep us alive in the podcast queues. If you support us through Amazon, thank you. You can click right on our website, edge-show.com. You click on an episode, an Amazon banner comes up. Click on that Amazon. It's the same Amazon you normally have. Not more expensive, but a little piece of whatever you spend comes to support this show. We have, in fact, I just got a big bill for our website maintenance and all that stuff. So this is the kind of thing that we just appreciate the support of the audience to help defray cost. We'll never do any commercials. That I promise you. There's also a PayPal link on our website, edge-show.com. You click the PayPal link and you can actually make a direct contribution to the show as well. Thank you so much, those of you who have done that. Really do appreciate it. Okay, let's get going.
This is The Edge.
The advantage, it means.
They let guy just spit on me for no reason.
That's horrible.
Is there some comfort in uncertainty, do you think?
You're a degenerate.
Because Australian Shepherds need action.
Wow.
Yeah.
This is The Edge.
That's a self-loathing term that I use.
Oh, got it.
You're listening to The Edge. Join us on the web at edge-show.com.
Time for the Fast 15, politics and more. He joins us from the road in Washington, D.C., where he is covering politics. He is Michael Shure, everyone. Yeah. You knew he'd never leave us alone.
You really missed me. That feels good.
Yeah. So much going on. How much do we care about Stormy Daniels, Michael Shure?
I mean, I think it's sullied a bit because of what her profession is. But anytime a U.S. president pays hush money to someone, it's news. And if you take it without the details, that's what this is allegedly. So you have to pay attention to it. You have to cover it. It's newsworthy.
So the latest thing that happened is that there's a restraining order sought by Trump's lawyer to essentially shut her up. And she's suing, her lawyer saying, hey, that original cloak of silence that covered this thing doesn't apply because your client didn't sign it.
Right. That's exactly right. And then if that's the case, it makes it null and void. It means that she can talk about it. She's not seeking damages or money in this lawsuit. She's seeking the ability to talk about this. So she's asking the court to say that it is not a valid document. In that case, if it's not, she can go out, Mark, and she can talk about it, and she can make money off of it, do whatever she wants, peddle it, or do nothing with it. But it just means that it's not a valid document.
There are those who are going to say, hey, you know what? I don't really care about Stormy Daniels. I didn't care about Monica Lewinsky. I mean, maybe there's an element in the Monica Lewinsky thing of sexual harassment now in this new Me Too moment. But Stormy Daniels is different because there is hush money being paid?
Yeah, I mean, they're both, like, just because it's women and sex and doesn't make them the exact same story. If there's a scandal or a whiff of corruption within the White House, whether it was Warren Harding and Teapot Dome or Richard Nixon and Watergate or Bill Clinton and Lewinsky and Trump and this woman, that's what matters. It matters at the core. It's the presidency under fire because the president allegedly paid somebody off to keep quiet about something.
The White House is just trying to fold it all into this general area of, yeah, we've heard the allegations about the president and different women, and we've heard the allegations about sexual harassment. They're trying to fold it all into that one package.
Yeah, which is smart of them. That's what they should do. But
Right.
It's not accurate. And if they find out, if this case opens Stormy Daniels to tell her truth, then it could get ugly for the president. But you start to wonder at a certain point what matters. Kellyanne Conway accused yesterday of violating the Hatch Act 2 times and, that bars the campaigning from the White House. 10 years ago even, that would have been a huge accusation. It would have been a story that took us for days and days. Now it lasted about a half an hour because something else came up.
Yeah, speaking of something else coming up, Erik Prince. Now, he's the guy who ran Blackwater, the private contracting outfit that essentially prosecuted the Iraqi war.
Right.
He was involved in a back channel to the Russians being established between President-elect at that time, Trump, and the Russians in Moscow. This whole thing was happening through, I guess, the United Arab Emirates. They were arranging this meeting.
The meeting happened in the Seychelles, which is an African nation, and it was acknowledged that there may have been a meeting, but not that it was set up before by these people.
Now, he wasn't part of the Trump campaign, Erik Prince. He's obviously very close to the president. In fact, he has a relationship with someone in the president's cabinet, right?
Yeah, his sister is Betsy DeVos, who is the controversial, because she basically lied during her confirmation hearings, Secretary of Education.
And what did she lie about?
Well, Betsy DeVos said that she initially was not on the board of a family foundation, one that gave money to anti-gay causes, specifically focused on the family. And it turned out that she was, in fact, on that board. So too was her brother.
So setting that up, that Erik Prince Seychelles encounter, tell me what laws are being broken there and how that might get that stink onto this presidency.
This would be a private back channel communication conduit to Russia through another country without Congress knowing about it, without the American people knowing about it, and without the intelligence community knowing about it. There are lots of things that go on that the American people don't know about, and all 535 members of Congress don't know about. But there are certain members of Congress, from the leadership to the intelligence community, that do know about these things, and nobody knows about this. This would be a secret. This wouldn't be within the intelligence community. This isn't the CIA. This is a private construct of this White House. If everything they say is true, and that would be illegal for many, many reasons.
So Erik Prince has this relationship with his administration, and it does appear that they were trying to work out some kind of back channel. Now, this is a different back channel than Jared Kushner was trying to work out. Remember, Jared Kushner was trying to work out a direct back channel to the Russians, and he actually talked about, isn't there a way I could come over to your place, the Russian embassy, and speak to you guys directly, and that way there wouldn't be a record of it. I mean, really, like, that should be a showstopper right there. But somehow it's not even remembered in all of this.
Well, nothing is a showstopper. I mean, the truest thing that Donald Trump has ever said is that he could shoot someone in the middle of Fifth Avenue and it wouldn't matter. And, it's a tongue-in-cheek thing to say. It's funny, it's provocative, all of that. It might be true. There's nothing that seems to stick. And not just against the president. It seems against anyone. Everything gets sped by so quickly now.
Well, I think sometimes the left runs when nobody's chasing them. And the right doesn't run even if there is a mob chasing them. And I think that oftentimes it's that double down theory that Donald Trump has. It's sort of like that, damn right. No, I said that. I said tariffs and I meant tariffs. Even as people are leaving his administration, people are saying, well, this could throw the economy on its side or whatever the rhetoric is around it.
Right.
But when it comes to scandal, or when it comes to things that would, if not bullseye illegality, certainly nibble around the bullseye of illegality, there doesn't appear to be any showstoppers. Let me get to the tariffs. So the president now wants a trade war, and he says we can win a trade war, and he wants tariffs on steel and aluminum.
That's right. 25% on steel, 10% on aluminum, and then what happens? Then the European countries, as was predicted by so many and presumably people that Gary Cohn had on his side in the White House. He's the former number 2 at Goldman Sachs, who was the president's economic advisor, and he said he threatened to resign should the president want to go forward with the tariffs. He did, and he stepped away. He's somebody who was considered for cabinet posts as well as chief of staff when John Kelly was under fire. This was not a small resignation, as some of the others may have been. And the tariffs now are being countered by European countries who said they're going to put their own tariffs on everything from peanut butter to Harley Davidsons.
It does appear as though the president is not budging on this, though. He's lost his economic advisor. People are telling him don't do it. He's hearing even from Congress people.
107 GOP members of the House today sent a letter to the White House saying they're totally against this. And they're against it both because of policy, very difficult to find a pro-tariff Republican on Capitol Hill, but also because of politics. They have to go back into their districts. And for members of the House, it's harder than members of the Senate because they're dealing with a smaller group of constituents. And those constituents, by and large, support them from the same, looking at the American economy through the same prism. And it's not a popular political conversation for them to have back home.
In this environment, I have trouble thinking that anybody really cares about policy. It strikes me that the political calculus here is taking precedent. Politics of their situation and the politics of the tariffs and the return trade war, that is to say, the tariffs that will now apply to Wisconsin cheese and to Jack Daniels and all the rest. I think the politics of that is carrying the day more than any sort of policy shortcoming that they see. Would you agree with that a bit, or?
Yes, to an extent. I mean, first of all, it's untested, so it's a theory that you're putting forward. Most of these men and women have run for office not on theories, but on having to have some kind of policy. The other side of that is the Republicans need a strong economy as their only crutch going into 2018. And if this somehow cuts into jobs and slows growth, as many of them believe, then that in and of itself is a tough message for them to take, even without the specifics of what the effect of tariffs are on growth. If growth is down and the economy is suffering because of it, and they can point to these tariffs, that's the only connected dot that these people will need.
I was most troubled this week by the fact that we are, as a country, going to allow hunters to import big game trophies. There was that move by this administration early on, and then there was so much blowback that Donald Trump said, no. We're gonna meet on this, and we're gonna decide. And hey, and everybody gave him credit for having backpedaled on it. But now it is going to go forward, a lifting of that ban.
Right, and it's among the most curious decisions I can think of, and especially at a time when we are being hypersensitive about guns for good reason, to even do anything that is pro-violence at its core is a strange decision. And this is not a gun issue. This is an animal issue. This is a moral issue. This supersedes that. But I'm saying it's happening in an era where we're talking about guns and we're talking about killing, and this is essentially the rewarding of death.
You're right to mention the gun thing, because the decision was really petitioned for by the NRA for a long time. So they're not exactly not in this fight. They are. The Safari Club International and the NRA, they actually filed a lawsuit against the Fish and Wildlife Service. And, they have campaigned for this. So elephant tusks, lion hides, big game trophies of many different kinds acquired in certain African countries are going to come in. Just quickly want to say this, Michael, before we move on, and that is, I hear this online, I get blowback about, it helps the local communities, and it's even stipulated in this lifting of this ban. Well, we're going to make sure that the money spent for this trophy hunt go to the local communities to help conservation and move the cause of conservation forward in these communities. And we've detailed on this show before, and if you haven't heard it, you should go back and listen to our conversation with Damian Mander. He's the guy who hunts the hunters. He's the guy who fights poaching in Africa, and he will tell you firsthand that's just not true. So when you hear that these licenses, hundreds of thousands of dollars are served up by these dentists and doctors and professionals who are just rich guys who go over there and kill these great animals, most of them are endangered, either formally on the endangered species list or just as a practical matter endangered. These guys, their monies don't help the local communities and they don't help preserve anything. So
people should listen to that. Also, you talked about the lobbyists, the NRA and Safari Club International. Is that what you said?
Right.
There are two other lobbyists, and that's Eric and Donald Trump Jr., who do this for sport, and I'm sure they had the president's ear. And I don't know that they did. I don't know that they talked about it, but they've demonstrated it, and by doing it, and it's disgusting. And the president supported it, so it's again, easy dots to connect, even if it's not totally true.
I think you actually make a really good point, and there might be considerable truth to that. Michael, did you see the story about the con man who pulls off this $179 million scheme and nearly fled, having gotten away with it?
Because he was able to convince a judge to get him to leave him out on parole until his sentencing, I believe.
That's right. He pled guilty to defrauding the public of $179 million. And he
would serve better on the outside working to get these things repaid. So to put him in prison at that time would have been less productive. He could have done more from outside. Well, do more he did, and he almost was able to. He was on the cusp of being able to move his family to Ecuador.
That's exactly what the plan was. Apparently, he went back to scamming people out of cash, and it worked. He passes himself off as his bank employee. He threw himself a $30,000 party at a Four Seasons hotel
in Chicago
for his daughter's birthday, and then had a $28,000 ski trip. And the day before he was going to be going into prison, he had hatched a plan to go to Ecuador, but they nailed him.
They did. He had a private plane booked out of Florida, and they nailed him. This is one of those crimes, and this is very surface, and there must be people who are really hurting for this crime. And it's an insensitive thing to say, but as somebody, who goes to a movie once in a while, you kind of were rooting for him to get to Ecuador to see what would happen. But,
yeah.
He wasn't Bernie Madoff, but he wasn't, a whole lot better, I'm guessing. So he's probably a pretty bad guy, but the whole story reads like a spy novel, and I'm sure it's going to be one eventually.
He made up this story about he was going to go to rehab or whatever, and
that's what he told his lawyers and his accountants, that he was going to rehab for a week so that they wouldn't be curious when they weren't able to reach him for a week. They'd give him a week to get set up in Ecuador. Curious why he chose Ecuador. I'm sure there's a good reason for it, extradition-wise, etc. But I don't know why it was Ecuador that he chose.
The last item I have for you is that in Belgium, in Brussels, Belgium, a guy was given a ticket for jaywalking, and he started back-talking to the officer. Did you see this story?
I didn't know.
Okay, and 30% of Belgium's 40,000 cops are women. So this officer happened to be a woman. And so what does the man say? He says, "Shut your mouth. I don't talk to women. Being a police officer is not a job for women." He just starts going off on this, right? Well, he was convicted of sexism, slander, and threatening a police officer, and he was fined almost $4,000.
Wow.
In this country, nothing would happen. You would be, "Sir, if you're not quiet,
right,
I'm going to have to," you know what I mean? We just tolerate a-holes in this country to a much greater degree.
No, listen, there was a teacher, and I forget in what state this teacher was. He used the N-word in class and told his students not to date black boys because they're bad. And he got suspended without pay for 10 days. He didn't get fired.
God.
I'm not making this up. I will, it's 10 days. That's what he got.
Oh, it's unreal. They have a law against sexism in public. So in the case of your teacher example, I mean, it's a...
You couldn't go to what are construction sites like in Belgium.
Yeah, it's a different orientation over there. Michael, it is always fun to visit with you. Thank you for reviewing some of this crazy world that we're in. Are you back next week?
I'm back next week, Mark. Back on the Edge next week, live in front of all my fine friends in the audience, some of whom I hope came this week, even though I'm on the road.
Not only did they come, but they're here to see you off. He's Michael Shure. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you all so much. Oh, thank you very much.
Oh, it's nice.
If you enjoy listening to The Edge, support them by subscribing to The Edge on iTunes, Stitcher, and you can listen through the iHeartRadio app. Get busy listening.
And now entertainment journalist Sam Rubin joins us fresh from the Red Carpet Oscar show.
Mark, how are you?
I'm very well. I'm here with J Elvis Weinstein. Josh.
He is witty as always.
Yes,
wow.
He is.
Thank you, so.
First of all, I love your red carpet show. I love all of your red carpet shows. I love your red carpet thing. Sam did a thing. He does that like Bataan Death March of red carpet. I think it was like 5 hours long.
Right.
But I like it because it feels like real live spontaneous moments. There's nothing scripted. You guys are really both good on your feet. You and
Jessica Holmes.
Yeah, Jessica Holmes. She's unflappable. I just wanted to stipulate to the fact that I really do enjoy it sincerely, and I was watching for much of the day. But what I really want to get at was the vibe this year, your view of the show, and we just wanted to kick around, all of us, just some Oscar thoughts. So did you have a sense on the red carpet of any of the controversy stuff involving Ryan Seacrest or any of that? What was going on down there?
Well, let me start with the self-serving stuff. Even though the Oscar ratings were down, and I guess E's ratings were horrifically down, ours were up. So
yeah.
I think viewers are looking for spontaneity and looking for excitement and looking for fun. So I was happy about that. And then also, this is funny. This is where sometimes I really object to that phase, fake news and the depiction of a media in a particular way. But this Ryan Seacrest story simply wasn't fair. The fact of the matter was we were 6 places away from him. Nobody avoided him. We all basically got the same people. The story that wasn't being told is that the Academy and ABC, in an effort to sort of monopolize the better parts of the coverage, force other outlets to go off the air earlier and earlier and earlier. I've done this for a long time. We used to go all the way till the show began. Then it was a half an hour carve-out, an hour carve-out. Now it is a 90-minute carve-out.
Oh, wow.
And that's because these shows, and to Ryan's credit, the E! Show and our show and other non-ABC shows are doing, because frankly we do a better job than they do. We're doing so well that ABC was like, well, wait, it's our event. Why are we letting them involved? And I think there is a relation between the diminishment of the airtime of these other alternative red carpet shows and the success of the Oscar telecast. As you cut these other shows back, which generate real excitement, you find that the Oscar telecast viewership is declining.
The law of unintended consequences there, right? You think that you're actually going to be helping funnel everybody to you, but the truth is that you've helped actually kill a little bit of the buzz that would be there otherwise.
Precisely. So, and then otherwise, I mean, a couple of these things, Mark, you and I have talked about it over the years, and these are cliche phrases, but they remain true. This award season is a particularly endless slog. This year, longer than other years because of the Winter Olympics. They delayed the Oscars by another week, which is agony. And the thing that I think was sort of disappointing and something that everybody's going to need to look at is the fact that all the predicted winners, particularly the 4 actor winners, Gary for Darkest Hours, Allison for her work on I, Tonya, Sam Rockwell and 3 Billboards. Notice I call the first 2 just by their first names.
Yes.
All these, Frances McDormand, this was designated months ago. You knew that Gary Oldman was going to win because everybody told you Gary Oldman was going to win. And so it's kind of this, there wasn't any real, shock or surprise. So I thought that was disappointing. I thought they were to be commended for embracing the envelope problem. A lot of sort of uptight organizations, the Academy generally is an uptight organization, would, it never happened, shying away from it. I love the fact that they embraced it. It's a super tough room. I think Jimmy Kimmel did a perfectly good job in sort of addressing everything. And I think he has a great sensibility for the whole thing. I'll say something, and I don't mean this out of disrespect for him. I don't know if he has the appropriate wattage to do the show. They've gone through a lot of, different hosts, and it's a job that a lot of people don't want to do and quite a few people turn down. But, I think you want to get the biggest possible star you can get to do it. And the fact of the matter is probably the biggest possible star saying no.
I have one thought on that, and that is that when you get a star who is like Jimmy, who can think on his feet and make it fun, right, they may not have the, let's say, celebrity cred in terms of feature films or, as you say, the wattage. But then if you go that way, you may give up something in terms of somebody who will make it a fun and also authentic event in terms of what goes on. That is to say, there'd be maybe some unpredictable moments and that kind of thing.
Right. Daniel Day-Lewis is a more prestigious name, but he wouldn't be nearly as much fun.
Exactly right. If Oscar really wanted to get back to like this Academy feel, by the way, I love that they call themselves the Academy. I mean, what a great name. It's such a, it connotes an elite. Yes, exactly. An elite status that you could only hope to someday achieve. Right. But if you had somebody like a Christopher Plummer, who, by the way, was great with you guys. If I can just digress, Josh, I'm watching, and Christopher Plummer is talking to Sam and Jessica. He's an old man. What is he, 80 years old or 82?
No, well into his 80s. I think much closer to 90.
So, and he was so much fun. He was like laughing, and there was not a doddering cell in his body, you know?
I'll digress for 1 second, too. It may be a recurring theme. The best stars were the older stars. Eva Marie Saint, who won an Oscar decades ago.
Yes.
And well over 90 was a presenter this year, and, was great on the carpet. And the fact that the Oscars are 90 years old, and there's Rita Moreno wore the same dress that she wore in, 1960.
Yeah, amazing.
So those were cool things. But I'm sorry, I interrupted
you. No, what all I was going to say is someone like that, like a Christopher Plummer who commands the room and who speaks in such a way as to, there's a certain regal quality to him, but you'll have none of the fun. You'll have none of the jokes. You'll have none of the magic that goes down that way as you would with,
what other thing people are suggesting is, Billy Crystal had these huge production numbers, and, Neil Patrick Harris, a song and dance band, Hugh Jackman, a song and dance band, frankly sort of failed in their hosting efforts. So I don't know what you do. It's a very difficult task.
Yeah, I think when Billy Crystal's first couple of years, he came, and did them, they were fun for everybody, and then they just became rote,
Yeah, and the last thing I would say is I don't think it's a host-dependent thing either. I think your first point about the fact that there is no anticipation, it feels as though it's a bit of a foregone conclusion. I suspect that has more to do with the excitement and the viewership than anything else.
But that's all true. Although one thing, and I referenced this in our post-Oscar coverage, these were good winners. These weren't winners who just walked up there and said, I love my agents at CAA, thank you, good night. These were emotional winners who had things to say, Frances McDormand, I guess, most notably. So that's good.
No, you're right. Those are big moments. Those are absolutely, as much as people say, I don't want those show business people in Hollywood to give all those speeches about politics. I mean, those are the memorable moments.
Right. I mean, but the truth about the Oscars is they're only as relevant as you want them to be. You know what I mean? We declare it's something that we declare relevant, and obviously 90 years in, it's still going pretty comparatively strong by TV rating standards. But as
I think inherently reporters and media outlets are lazy, so the Oscars are relatively an easy thing to cover. You know exactly where it's going to be. There's a whole process to go through, and that's why all these Golden Globes, all these entertainment events get so much coverage.
And by the way, when they say the ratings are down, tell everyone what the ratings actually were. I mean, they were still pretty good.
Again, name 3 other shows that I think this year they drew around 25 million people.
I mean, that's a lot of people.
Yeah, it's still, I think, second only to the Super Bowl. So
they did the same thing they do this with so many shows where they're kind of sticking a stake in them.
As the voice of American Idol, Mark, Idol only got 10 million people.
Right, exactly. That was true as well. This is interesting. So the one thing that I'm surprised by is that this faux controversy. So when Ryan Seacrest, I read a piece, I think it was in the Daily Beast, that Seacrest had to abandon his station early and come back to the Roosevelt Hotel. He was so frustrated with his inability to get stars, but you're saying that wasn't the case.
That wasn't the case at all. The fact is his right to broadcast ended at 3:30, and that was 90 minutes to go. And you have these opportunities. There's all these crazy arcane rules. We continued because you could broadcast in 3-minute increments once every half hour.
Like George is live at the thing. We'll go to him now, kind of. Okay.
Yeah, exactly, precisely right. But we had a really good thing with Common and Tiffany Haddish, where I inadvertently tried to fix them up, but without knowing that he's already in a committed relationship, stuff like that. But it happens. But I one thing that I do like, and I think there's this prom analogy. People are done up and they're nervous, and I think that's exciting. And I mean, a couple of these people in person, you just like, oh my God, the girl from Baby Driver, Lisa Gonzalez.
Oh my God.
Oh, I mean, and literally, when she left, we talked to her. She leaves, and our crew is almost entirely male. They're sobbing. I'm like, fellas, wake up. Come on, we got to finish. Here is the thing. There's that magazine that stars are just like us. Some of them are not like us. They're way better looking than us. And there's just this, ethereal quality that they have that mere mortals don't possess. And some people, Allison Janney was very, they want it. They want to win it. They're willing to work for it. And that's another thing I should point out about Gary Oldman. I mean, that was a great performance. But I have in my email box no less than 30 invitations to a Q&A with Gary Oldman, to a screening with Gary Oldman, to cocktails with Gary Oldman.
Right, he wanted it.
He wanted it, J Elvis, and he campaigned for it, like more than anybody.
He was involved in a domestic abuse scandal,
right,
a story.
And sort of who gets a pass and who doesn't. So let's, for the sake of comparison and contrast, what he was accused of was far worse than anything Ryan Seacrest has been accused of. And Ryan Seacrest gets all this, play, or what I would say negative play.
He was specifically, Gary Oldman was accused of what, Sam?
A, of domestic violence, and B, of anti-Semitism, tremendous anti-Semitism.
Yeah.
The typical Jews control Hollywood, all the stuff that sadly we know is not true.
There wasn't a peep about that.
No, and then I think sort of these punching bags of sorts, there was a big Mel Gibson joke, which was actually a very funny joke. It's all interesting. One thing that'll be interesting, and we'll see, maybe, the year will unveil itself in a different way, but if next year's Oscars is just this crowning glory all about Black Panther, which this year was to a large degree,
right?
Maybe that generates more interest, because by that time, everyone will have seen Black Panther probably 2 or 3 times. Also, by the way, a terrific movie.
And we'll let you go here in a second, but just on that point, because one of these points that is made every year in terms of evaluating Oscars, that if they're populist films that have won, that is to say a lot of people saw them, that oftentimes that just makes them more relatable than those years where the super indie films win and not as many people have seen them.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. How many people have gone to a theater and paid money to see 3 billboards? Not very many.
Right.
And not very many in cities outside of New York and Los Angeles, for sure.
And fewer Darkest Hour.
Right.
I haven't even seen 3 billboards for that movie.
Right, precisely. And how many people went to see Titanic? Quite a few. It'll be interesting because, as we talk right now, one cool thing about Get Out, and by the way, Jordan Peele, not only a great talent, a great winner.
Yeah.
To have that movie continue from last February all the way a year later through award season is remarkable. I assume Black Panther will have a similar track.
Right. If Get Out had won Best Film of the Year, I would have been happy with that. I thought that movie was absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, I thought it was absolutely phenomenal too. This is, as it sound babyish, I don't like that genre.
Right, and that genre's not going to win, so yeah.
It was far beyond the genre film.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah. Quickly, I'll preface this by telling you that I love the roll-ins. I know it was Oscars 90th, but I like those look back. I could never even imagine being in a room and editing all that. I mean, and having to choose between those, children. But it was really good, and I wish they would do that. I thought it really buffed out the broadcast. It reminded us all why we're there. But having said that, what other stuff, maybe it's that, maybe it's other stuff, or maybe it's pacing, what would you change if you were producing the Oscars?
Well, this is the ongoing arm wrestle that has gone on for decades, and I promise you there's a meeting about this next week, is this. These below-the-line awards. Sound design, it's fantastic, but nobody wants to see it on a show that's 4 hours long. And they will not divest themselves of these quote-unquote technical awards. So you got to do that, and then you've got to, some of this fluff. I thought the bit when they visited the film fans was good, but it was quite long. They try to make the show 3.5 hours long, and it's always 4 hours long. Maybe try to make it 2.5 hours long. I don't know what you do, but that's an ongoing debate. Yeah,
I mean, my only argument about the tech awards is that they're calling themselves the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences, and so it's almost, if you make it only about the performances, you're undercutting that whole idea. Yeah, no. The one big thing, though, as Angelinos, Wilshire and Fairfax, that Academy Museum, all $400 million worth, that's what the Oscars built. And, they did a lot in the pre-show about that. And that's going to come to life in about 2 years.
And that takes money, and that's the reason the Oscars will never be shorter, because they sell those ads. And the longer the show, it may be frustrating for us as viewers, but the more ads you can get in. Commercials drive that broadcast. And also, there's a premium on those commercials and that broadcast because it's a live show. That is to say, it's appointment viewing, right? It's not watched on delay by many people.
No, exactly. And it's a very rare thing. How many water cooler things remain? And this is a water cooler thing. So that's really important.
Sam Rubin!
Friends, great talking to you. I love The Edge.
Thank you. We love you back.
Sam.
Talk soon. Thanks, man. Those red carpet things are so tough, man.
You've done them, right?
I'm going to say I did maybe 15 of them when I was at Fox.
Okay.
And I did the Emmys. I hosted the big network Emmy show on the red carpet with Nancy O'Dell. But I'm not talking about that. That's a whole machine that's bringing you people and all the rest. I'm talking talking about being out there as a local person.
Right.
For even local LA. I mean, that's a pretty big station I'm working for, but I'm still shoved down the line next to, literally, I was next to a Farsi station once. I mean, the guy was speaking Farsi. I'm thinking, these stars don't speak Farsi. What, he'd do a Farsi thing, and then he would turn to Denzel Washington and go, so, what was it like to do training day? So I guess what I'm trying to say is you're crushed down there oftentimes with less esteemed reporters and media outlets. And there's a lot of this, and this is the kind of thing you never know unless you're out there. You're midway down the line, not even all the way down at the end. But the two people to your left, that is to the stops that the stars are going to be making before you, they have tape recorders, digital recorders, and they're holding them out. One I remember worked for TV Guide. One of them worked for some blog. I mean, literally, it was not and the reason I asked was because they dominated the stars for more than 6 minutes. So what happens is that, first of all, everybody's got limited time, these celebrities.
Right.
And because the premiere's about to begin, and they're kind of squeezed out once they've talked for 6 minutes to a couple of media outlets. So by the time they get to you, they, A, may not have any time for you at all. I mean, they might blow right past you.
Right.
Or B, really not have much to say because they just said
canned at that point.
Yeah. So it's just awful. I mean, if you don't have a plan.
And are you allowed to have a wrangler with you, or it's just you and your charm kind of trying to draw them in with your own personal charisma, sort of?
Yeah, when you're a local news person, which I was in Los Angeles at the Fox owned and operated station, it's simply yelling, Denzel, can I just get a minute with you? And I have a voice that does cut through, and people do respond
it does
to
go,
it.
Professional broadcaster over there. I'll go to him.
Yeah.
Instead of, hello, I'm from Farsi TV. How do you feel, Denzel? How do you feel good? Do you feel good?
I did share Tom Cruise with the woman from Telemundo.
Okay.
And he was learning Spanish because at the time I think he was going out with
Penelope Cruz.
Right.
Yeah.
And so he said, you can speak to me in Spanish. And I said, we'll do medio a medio, like half and half. Actually, that wasn't a bad one. I thought he was very gracious. That was a huge premiere. It was from Mission Impossible.
Okay.
It was 4 blocks of downtown LA with bleachers and people filling the bleachers.
Wow.
I mean, it was
who goes to that?
It was as big a red carpet scene as the Oscars.
Yeah.
And Halle Berry, when she played Catwoman, I think I did that one.
Yeah.
So these are a while ago, but I just remember some of them were very, very big stars, and some of them it's really frustrating. And it's also really cool to talk to Ron Howard. We did, I think it was the Russell Crowe plays a fighter, screenplay by Akiva Goldman.
Cinderella Man?
Yeah, Cinderella Man. Thank you. I did that with Renee Zellweger. Okay. I remember doing that. That was a good one because there were just a lot of people there who you wanted to talk to. You want to talk to Ron Howard, Akiva Goldman, Renee Zellweger, Russell Crowe. So even if you don't get all of those, if you get a handful of those, you can put a piece together.
I was about to say, when you're doing this, you're not doing it live, so you're basically just trying to get a nice little soundbite reel from the event.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and you almost wish you could tell them, hey, I just
need one line.
I'm not going to take you for more than 90 seconds. I think they see us all as the same. You know? But yeah, you don't. You only need 90 seconds and a moment, and you're done.
Right.
These publicists are brutal too. Like, you can have one question for Sharon Stone. One. Right. Okay. So I remember I asked her one question, and then she didn't leave. And I said, I think I'm only supposed to ask you the one question. Like I'm a rules and regs guy. Like I said, I think I'm only supposed to ask you the one question. She said, no, it's okay. Go ahead. And I'm like, oh, okay. So I ask another one. I said that I think that she wants you to move along. She said, no, go ahead. And you don't have to pay attention to her. I thought that was so cool.
That's good.
So
you don't hear a lot of stories of Sharon Stone being so cool.
Yeah, I guess not. Thank you, Josh.
Sure.
And now writer, producer, director, performer Ben Garant created Reno 911, Night at the Museum, did the Pacifier, the Vin Diesel movie. We worked on a show together so long ago. This is my first chance to see him in all those many years. You know who he had in was Mike Scully.
Oh, wow.
Remember when Mike Scully did the work on our show?
Yeah.
It was cool. He remembered it.
Really?
Remembered, yeah, which I thought was interesting since...
He must do so much stuff.
Right, and it was just a one-off,
It was a one-off, and it was like 25 years ago,
I don't know if it was that long ago. Maybe it was.
20? It was when I first moved to L.A., so it was about 20 years ago.
God almighty, man. Jeez. Anyway, Ben Garant, producer, writer, performer, comic. You don't have to really bill yourself as a comic per se.
I'm not really a comic. I tried to do stand-up a couple of times. I was sort of peer pressured into it, and could almost do it for about 4 minutes. It's like the hardest job in the world. You either want to do it or you can't do it.
The reason I kind of almost lean toward comic, though, is because you do improv comedy, like you're a virtuoso improv comedy guy. I mean, you were with The State, which was tell everybody what The State was.
The State was, in the early 90s, MTV, when it was very first doing scripted stuff, when it was transitioning from just music videos, they did a couple of game shows, like Remote Control, and then they did one sketch show, and that was us. And we were a college comedy group from NYU, and we've been together for 6 years, and they gave us a pilot, and we lasted for 3 seasons. And so to a certain age of stoner person, it's like Big Mojo. It's like for a certain kind of, like if you were stoned and in college or in like high school at that time, it was big, because it was the first young people doing a sketch show since like the 70s. It was American young guys just like doing sketches. And
it was sort of like what SNL might have been in the first days, you mean?
It was a combo. It was like we were very influenced by SNL and Monty Python, and that's what it looks like. It looks like we were very influenced by
it. Sort of post Kids in the Hall.
Yeah, it was contemporary. Like they were doing it while we were doing it. And people every once in a while, like, they think I'm one of the kids in the hall. They're like, yeah, you're kids in the hall.
It's all one big sketch in their head.
Right, that's true. Squashing your head. Yeah, but we were and the Mr. Show was about the same time too.
Okay, right.
They were all kind of the same 3 or 4 years there.
Of course, when you did Reno 911, that was a lot of improv.
That was totally improv. Yeah, that was. We had a loose outline of what we knew was going to be the punchline of the sketch, but we never wrote dialogue for it. And sometimes we didn't write an outline. Like when we had Tobias on, we just knew we were going to pull up to Big Mike, who was our meth head, our like prominent meth head citizen of Reno. And we just knew we were going to pull up to him and start talking. And we had no idea sort of what was going to happen. And he would have a couple of weeks to think about it and to think about stuff to throw at us. But we didn't write any sketches. And if it was a bigger sketch, we would plan the stunt or the punchline. We knew that at the end of this, the KKK guy is going to catch on fire. So we know we bring in the stunt man. But it was not, we never wrote a line of dialogue, which was great. It was
and
very fun.
How many cameras were you covering it with?
Big days when all 7 cops were there, 3, usually 2.
All in just handheld follow doc style?
Yeah, okay. And which was great because it was very forgiving. The show's look was cop, so it didn't have to look pretty. We were doing mostly daylight exteriors. And Cops has jump cut, so you didn't need to go in and do coverage, so we didn't have to try to recreate improv moments, which always sucks.
And the conceit was it was a show like Cops in the show, so you could see cameramen in the shot.
We would talk to our cameraman all the time, and we would. I
watched the show and I can't remember all the details.
Yeah, but we were for Joe. We would talk to Joe, the cameraman, and he would ask us to redo stuff sometimes. And we always talked about doing an episode where you met the film crew, and we talked about them being like very fancy German documentarians, and they would only speak in German, and we never got around to that. But yeah, it was very much Cops. The premise was we had signed on to do a show like Cops, and we didn't know that they were going to edit it to make us look like idiots.
Okay.
And that was our, we would get mad. We would say like, we get stuff right all the time, but they don't show that. And so we were at odds with our fictional crew.
Some of the things on Reno 911 were modular, just as you say, you could take the crackhead sequence and you could put it in any show at any, right, or fill out whatever you want. Whereas others, though, I felt like there was an arc to what was going to happen in that episode.
It was a great formula. We would usually devote about 30% of the show to a plot. That would begin in the morning briefing room usually, and then have a couple of sort of episodes. One of them, like Trudy, was in her car and she got sort of caught up in a learn French tape that she was listening to, and she passed out from carbon monoxide poisoning. And so people thought she'd tried to commit suicide, and so they put her on suicide watch. So then we all had to take a turn with her suicide watch, and she milked it to kind of get stuff out of us. And so, we shot the beginning and the end, and then 7 little segments with one of us with each of her. It was simple. And what was great about it was if something didn't work, you didn't use it. You weren't stuck with material that fell flat because the plots were usually simple and based on just a character idea.
And you could always be shooting.
We would shoot in the morning briefing room. We would shoot about 8 hours of footage. And of that 8 hours, we would use about 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Sprinkled throughout the 13 episodes of the show.
But you could be shooting the whole time.
You'd be shooting the whole time. We never cut.
Beautiful,
We would do takes that were 19 minutes. We would do takes, and we would never, because sometimes you would do improv, and it would be funny for a couple of minutes, and it would be really not funny for like 5 minutes. But then something weird would happen that none of us expected, and it would get funny again, and then you just use the funniest 3 minutes of a 19-minute thing.
And that's just an understanding when you're improv actors or when you're actors doing improv that, look, don't worry that every word out of your mouth isn't funny or may not even help the moment. Just get a word out of your mouth and we'll work around it.
We got better at prepping people for that. We got better at prepping people saying, don't worry. We will never put anything in the show that makes you look unfunny. We'll never put a clunker joke. We'll never put you trying to think of a joke. We'll make you look great. And so by the second season, people relaxed. And it's always was the same. When people would come in with 5 minutes of jokes, people would have thought about it, and they'd have jokes, and they felt like jokes, and you'd get through with those, and then we wouldn't turn the cameras off, and you'd keep going, and that's when usually it got really, really great, was when people sort of ran out of their material, and they were stuck doing this character dealing with us cops trying to stop them from having sex with a mailbox or whatever, and that's when it got great. Yeah, it was fun. It was neat. We learned it on our feet, and it was a good experience.
Yeah, the characters were real. That was one of the things that was so funny about the show. You could say certain sequences were sort of broad comedy, but because the characters felt real, it just didn't seem, it didn't seem fake. If I'm making my point,
people played it earnest. People were trying to do their jobs well, and nobody was trying to act like an idiot. Everybody was really trying to be a good cop. They just weren't good at it, and people were really. The show started because we did a sketch pilot for Fox proper, and it at the table read died. Like we did a table read with all these executives. We wrote like hundreds of sketches, and we read the best 10. And at the table read, you could feel there's no way
to fake laugh.
They're not gonna pick this up at all. And we had already hired a director, Beth McCarthy. We'd already built sets, and after the table read thought, well, this is pointless for us to shoot this sketch show because it's going to die. What if we took the money we had left and did something else? And in a week, we thought up, what if we just did a cops parody? What if we just bought uniforms and ran out and see what happened? So nobody had any time to think of their characters. So everybody is playing sort of themselves. Like Cedric is just Cedric in that show, and Rainisha is just slightly making fun of herself. We're all, nobody had time to think of some convoluted thing, which was great because that would have been really hard to improv for 7 years. But everybody's just like a slightly bizarro version of themselves.
That's when you're doing something that's sketch based, that's the danger always, is the line of sketch character versus human behavior.
Yeah. And it was great because you don't have time. It was great because you didn't have time to think of it throughout the course of the day. So everybody was just not thinking. Everybody was just sort of being themselves.
So take us then you do this thing, you shoot a presentation or whatever, you shoot some stuff and then you turn it into a presentation?
We shot a 22-minute pilot. We shot a whole pilot for, I think, $200,000 on Fox and edited it, and we loved it and they hated it. And we later heard stories that every young executive at Fox put it on the schedule and every old executive did not. And we I don't know if that's true, but we heard it. And we took all of their notes, and the one note we wouldn't do, it ended with Dangle pulling over a guy, and he's a personal trainer, and they start talking about, well, dude, this says you're 295, you're not that heavy, are you? And they start sort of flirting with each other, and then they end up making out by the side of the road, and we wouldn't cut it. We said, well, if we can't do that in the pilot, what are we going to do? It wasn't that risque to us at all.
Right.
And Fox said, no, if you have guy on guy, we're not going to show that. And we said, all right, well, we're going to trust that you'll pick us up anyway, because we're so funny. And they passed, and it sat on a shelf for 3 years. And Comedy Central, we knew one of the executives there, Jim Sharp.
Sure.
And we're having beer with Jim Sharp. And he said, well, if you guys have anything you want to do. And we said, well, I got a videotape in my closet of this great show that was super cheap. And that's why it ended up on Comedy Central.
That's how I was on Mystery Science Theater. That's how we got there, too.
That's so funny.
It was really cheap tapes.
Yeah, really cheap. That was it. Here you go. How much was it? Oh, was it 200? Okay, yeah. Do 10 of them.
The business side of that, Fox doesn't own it. In other words, when they pass on it, the rights revert back to you?
We owned the characters. They had to Comedy Central had to buy the pilot. And weirdly, we had to reshoot the pilot but we reshot it shot for shot, word for word, which is a very like strange catch-22.
That sounds like a music business
really
thing.
Bizarre. So we just totally redid it, and we didn't change a thing, which I'm still, they explained that to me 100 times why we had to do that, and we never really understood, but they totally bought it. And what's interesting is the lawyer at Viacom who made the deal forgot to mention the movie rights. So there were no movie rights in the contract, and that's why the movie was Fox, which was really weird. It was just, somebody just forgot. And so when we started to do the movie, some lawyer looked at it and was like, you know what? I think Fox still owns the movie rights to this thing. And so we had to go through 20th Century Fox proper.
Wow.
So yeah, very, very strange.
I'm curious about the step before that, where it dies at the table, and they go, well, we're not picking this up. Is that what happened?
They didn't say it, but we knew it.
Right.
You know,
so you just went to them and went, okay, we know you're not picking this up, so give us a week.
We didn't have to turn it in for about 6 weeks.
Okay.
And our producer on the show was John Landgraf, who's now head of FX.
Okay.
And he was with Jersey Television then. And we thought he'd say no, but we said, hey, we just, Tom and I went up to him and said, like, this is pointless. Why shoot these sketches? They're not going to buy these. Like, what if we did this? And he said, okay. He said, do it. Do whatever you're going to do. And he sold it to him.
Cool.
Yeah. It's a miracle. Very, very unorthodox.
It's really, it is. Look, obviously, it's a funny show. How long did it last? I feel like it lasted 9 seasons or something.
6 seasons.
6 seasons.
Yeah, like 90 episodes.
Yeah, and I guess I have a recollection of it as having a longer life because it was in syndication, and I saw more of it. It was ubiquitous for a few years.
It was everywhere. Yeah, they syndicated it. Like WGN had it. And it was on in Germany, and it's big in Australia. It was on like everywhere.
So when you travel to those various countries, people recognize you from the show at all? Although you had a haircut that was different.
I don't get recognized. I'll be at press events if I'm not in wardrobe with the whole crew, and people will hand me a camera and say, hey, take a picture of me with the Reno guys. And people don't believe me. I'll be with everybody, and they'll say, no, that's Junior. And without the mustache and the haircut, people just don't see it.
Why did it go off the air? Because I still think it was really fun.
We don't really know. We changed cast, and some of the real fans hated it, but the ratings were exactly the same.
I thought you integrated new characters.
We integrated a couple of new people.
They all worked pretty well.
We thought it was great. Like some of the original, like real hardcore fans didn't like it, but we don't really know. The ratings were exactly the same. The budget didn't go up, and nobody ever really gave us a straight answer. I don't know.
Wow.
We don't know.
Yeah, if you don't know, then no one knows, because you had a tight relationship with execs up there, and they certainly respected you guys.
Was there exec turnover in that time?
Yes, there was.
I mean, that's what happens.
There was exec turnover.
Someone else's shit is on the table.
And it seems like there was a little bit of East Coast, West Coast competition, that the people in the East Coast were certainly more in charge of development than the West Coast. But still, I mean, that's just a theory. We don't know.
I mean, that seems to be like what happens a lot when it's like no one can take credit for it, then it has no value to them.
That's exactly right. But Jim was still there, and Jim was like our guy, and Kent was still there, and Kent was one of our main executives. So I don't know.
The Reno 911 movie, you mentioned the rights thing about 20th and everything. I enjoyed that movie. It seemed like it was going to have to live up to another standard than the TV show, which is that you're going to need a whole story, right, to carry me along and keep me to the end.
I really like that movie. It didn't do great financially.
Why?
And reviews were mixed.
Wasn't it not expensive to produce? Right?
I think that at the time, Hutch Parker, head of Fox, said, you're crazy to make this thing rated R. He said, you're nuts. He said, you've got to make it PG-13 because your audience is kids. You're nuts. And we couldn't see a way to do it. We couldn't bleep it. And we thought that if people went to the Reno movie and we didn't curse and we didn't shoot people and we didn't have violence and nudity especially, we thought it wouldn't be true to us. But I think we made a mistake. I think we should have listened to his advice. I think if it had been PG-13, I think it would have done exponentially better. I know that we opened against Knight Rider with Nick Cage, and they estimate that we lost at least $2 million to kids buying tickets to Knight Rider and going in to see Reno 911. But it was R. And
how do they?
I have no idea.
That's a wild thing.
But it might just be a standard like percentage,
I see.
But Hutch Parker, to his credit, said you guys are nuts. Like this should be PG-13. You're gonna say I'm right, and we do. Like
35% of Nick Cage's ticket sales are actually people bleeding off in other theaters.
Still counts.
Yeah.
He still gets to buy a T-Rex head.
Yeah, but I love the movie.
I thank you. We had super fun doing it. It was a 15-day shoot for a feature movie.
Wow.
It was like $9 million. We did it 8 days in Miami and 7 days here. There was no script. We had an outline. We gave an outline of it and they approved. They let us shoot it with just like an outline, which is incredible. So it was an improv. Toby Huss, we didn't even know what he was going to do. We told Toby Huss, we want you to be the manager of the hotel we're staying. Don't tell us what you're going to do. And so he went to set in a separate van so that we wouldn't see his costume. So we had no idea. And on the show, he's Big Mike. He's this meth head. And he came up as like this weird German guy. Hello, are you here for the Suckfest? And we had no idea what was happening. And you can't fake that. Like if we'd heard it and tried to think of jokes, it wouldn't have been as fun. So yeah, it didn't do great, but oh man, it was fun. And I like that one. That's a movie I tell people to watch.
That takes such great confidence, like to say, look, I don't want to know anything you're going to do. Just show up. I don't know what character you are. I don't know anything. I just know that you're the. I'm sorry. I just think that I guess I'm way too nervous. Tell me,
but he has the experience of knowing that it doesn't work if you have a bag of jokes with you,
right?
And you know, and we know him, and we know it's like we're going to shoot with him for 20 minutes, two takes. We need 70 seconds. If we have 70 seconds of this is funny, that's not a lot of pressure. You know,
yeah, that does help.
Yeah, somebody's going to say something funny. You know, so it's not. And we'd done a bunch of episodes of the show by then, so we knew kind of how it worked. And we edit the show ourselves. We sit there with the editor and grill through it, so we know what you need, and what you need isn't a ton. You just need a couple of pops.
Was it slower shooting when you were doing a film?
No, I think this was a mistake. We overshot. We did the same thing that we did for the show, which is we overshot like crazy, and each cop had his or her own plot line, and we did that out of respect to the process of the show, but looking back, I think it would have been much more efficient to only focus on Dangle and Weigel and not because we didn't use any of the other stuff, you know. So we shot a lot of we shot 10 pieces a day, just like we did for the TV show. And looking back, that was a mistake. Like it would have been better just to tell the cast, suck it up, you're in a movie, don't complain. But the show, if we get to do more, you'll get a movie. But this first one is just about Tom and Carrie, and that's enough. But we were ambitious, and I think that was a mistake.
Yeah, interesting as you look back to see the things that, you know, you can never really be sure either, I suppose.
Yeah, it's an improv movie. So, and it was still cheap. It made its money back opening weekend, but, you know, we were going to do a sequel, and that never happened because it didn't make enough money.
We met doing a project for VH1.
Yep.
And
your idea, and it was great.
It was a cool idea. You really brought it to life.
I have that on VHS. I have a copy of The Agent on VHS. Great. Yeah, that's a great idea, and Mark Hamill was in the first cut of it. Like Mark Hamill was great, and it was a great director and great cast. It was really. I wish that had gone. It was a really good show.
A cool process. It was called The Agent, and then Rob Reiner came in and did the role of the agent, replaced Mark Hamill, in effect.
And he was great.
He was great too.
Yeah.
We had Mike Scully in. I think I mentioned that to you before we came on the air. And I was reminded, and I've told Josh was there that day too, that when Scully came in, and Rob Reiner was supposed to be there at a certain hour, he was late because he was talking to Al Gore, who at the time was running for president. I think so. Wow. You're right. It was that long ago.
Jeez.
But it was just I remember thinking to myself, holy shit, you know.
Yeah, he's the real deal.
What a great excuse that is for being late to a
That's a goodie. Yeah, that's a goodie.
I was talking to my buddy, he's running for president.
We're still not going to make our day, but that's great.
But it's great. It's great. It's great.
Anyway, well, this is really cool that you came, and you know, you throw an old pal a bone by being on our masterful podcast.
It was a pleasure. Yeah. Agent was great. Agent was that is a show you should just put that on the internet. I'll say that right now. You should just put that up. Who's going to say anything?
Yeah. You have. I don't know that I still have it. You still have it for real?
I have it in my garage. I was like going through my garage, throwing out stuff, and I found an old VHS tape in a black box.
So
The Agent.
I need to get that and then take it to be dubbed, right? Or however, transferred.
I think there's a place probably in this building, but I know there's a place across the street where I've had old home movies made into.
So I just need to have that transferred.
Yeah, I'll bring it.
Yeah, that'd be really cool. And yeah, why not? Maybe.
It's very entertaining.
It really is. It's a great. It was a great effort. But honestly, I had a character, and it was brought to life. You brought it to life, and it was really a cool experience to sort of jam with that band for a short time.
It was fun. That was one of my first gigs out here. That was when I was living in Jim Sharp's guest house. I had just moved out to Los Angeles from New York, and so that was one of my first, like, oh, okay, I got a job. I can buy food this week.
And Jim Sharp ran Broadway Video, which is Lorne Michaels' company. That's who produced it. So anyway, that's a little bit of our history. But you did Let's Go to Prison?
I did.
I just saw that on your list of things that you've done. Now, Let's Go to Prison, was that with Dak Shepard?
Yeah, Will Arnett and Dak Shepard.
Is that based on So You're Going to Prison, that book?
So it's based on the book You Are Going to Prison, Jim Hogsher.
Which is a fantastic.
It's a fantastic book. That's
horrible read.
That's our first ever job. We were here in movies. Tom and I were here doing the last season of Viva Variety.
This is Tom Lennon.
Tom Lennon, the guy in the shorts.
Yeah, exactly.
And he's in everything on TV.
He's your writing partner, right? He's gone on to be in everything.
He's in everything, and we're still writing partners. We met freshman year of college, and we've worked together almost every day for 30 years almost.
Wow. See Tom's name on, like, sometimes I'll drive past the Comedy Store or
he does stand up. Yeah. He does stand up. He does everything. He does stand up, and he does, like, he was on Odd Couple for years, and now he's on another show. Like, he loves it. He's out there. He's a very gregarious guy, and he just loves doing stuff and meeting people. And
that's more his thing than your thing.
Yeah. I'm a writer. I like sitting by myself and looking at my computer and thinking up stuff. Yeah. So we were here. Somebody approached us and said, "Hey, I'm a big fan. I have the rights to this book. You Are Going to Prison." The book is great. Go on Amazon right now and buy it. It's like 89 pages, and it's written by this guy, Jim Hogsher, who's written 2 books. And one is How to Make Heroin, and one is You Are Going to Prison. And it's not a narrative. It's a guide from when the cops knock on your door to the electric chair. This is everything that will happen to you. And this is how to make wine in the toilet. This is
there's things like you are going to get raped.
You are going to get raped. This is how it's going to happen. There's nothing you can do about it. This is how it's going to go down. Right. And it could be these guys. It could be these guys. Maybe you'll get sold to a tougher guy, and that's better because at least it has some regularity in your prison life. There are only 2 sets of handcuff keys in America. There's federal and state. So if you have these 2 keys on a chain around your neck, maybe if you're handcuffed in the back of the cop car, you can get out. It's tips like that.
Now hang on a second. But
it's useful shit.
It's very useful
but
shit.
But he didn't write it as a comic. He wrote
it as he's like a Unabomber guy. He lived in like a halfway house somewhere in Montana, and you would call him on a payphone to talk to him, and he sold the rights to it, and we wrote it as a comedy. We wrote it as the movie is, what if a guy uses all this information to torture the shit out of the judge that threw him in jail? And by the time he gets out of jail the 3rd time, the judge is dead, so he does it to his son, the judge's son, who's Will Arnett. And we wrote it, and it was NC-17. It was full of rape. And everybody in town loved it. They thought it was really, really funny. And so it was one of these scripts that would get passed around. And people say, you got to read this. This is really some funny shit. And so we would have meetings all over town, and we would think, oh, they're going to make it. They're going to make this movie. And they would say, there's no way anybody's ever going to make this movie. You Are Going to Prison. But your black characters are great. We have this movie Rebound with Martin Lawrence that needs a punch up. Would you want to do that? And we said yes to everything. We were like, yeah, we'll do that. Sure. And so that's what started our career. And then that movie didn't get made until about 10 years ago, 12 years ago. Like Odenkirk directed it. There's a cut of it.
Right, 06 is what they say
06, yeah, 10 years ago. And so it didn't get made for like a decade. And Bob Odenkirk directed it. And there's a cut of it that's great. There's a cut of it that was really funny and super dark and ended with the main character's execution, and it tested through the roof. And one bad executive said, "Hey, this movie's so great, we should let's soften it so that we can open it up in multiplexes, so that we'll make a ton of money." And so they took out everything good and put in a happy ending and ruined it. But and I wish Odenkirk would release his cut, because his cut of it was genuinely great. And like the White Stripes did the theme song, and it was really cool. And I know that exists because I saw it.
It seems like if ever there was an environment which you can pull that off,
yeah,
meaning
totally.
Release your own cut, it's now,
Right.
if you have the rights. I mean, he's got, I don't know how that works.
But it's great, yeah. So that was our first, like experience in the feature world.
That's an amazing chunk of source material to
Oh, so good. It was so entertaining. It's rape statistics and just like it's a very good book to have on your toilet.
When you were writing on your toilet, which you're sharing with the prisoners coming in 2.5
curling up into a fetal position as you read closer and closer, which is good for bowel movements.
Absolutely, it's a good position. It's a good position.
You have to share with. Isn't that the way it works in prison? Normally, you need to share. You have at least one person you're sharing that toilet with.
It depends how serious your crime was.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
The more serious it is, the better chance you have of privacy, really.
Oh, really? Well, there's that. You mentioned Tom Lennon, your writing partner for all this time. How did you write then? Meaning, did you write a scene, he wrote a scene, did you collaborate over it? And then how has that changed through the years?
We have gotten much better at it. We used to write, both of us in the same room, one of us arched over the computer and the other pacing around and figuring it out every scene as it goes. And that's a nightmare. That's the worst thing in the world, I think, is typing while somebody over your shoulder is also trying to do it.
And who was it? Was it just you alternated? Who was
hunched over? Unfortunately for him, he's a much better typist. I think now we're about even, but at the beginning, I didn't type at all. So I think he was the one forced to sit there and do it. And so now we never do that at all. We never write in the same room. We go to a bar and pitch each other ideas. What about this? What about this? We pick a couple that we like. We do that 3 or 4 times and kind of figure out what's the end. What's the big blocks of this movie, and then one of us will write like a 1-page outline, give it to the other one. That person will fill it out with details and fix holes and everything, and we'll go back and forth for about 4 weeks until the outline is usually about 25 or 30 pages, and that outline is pretty much everything in the script except for the dialogue and scene description. So it's everything that happens in the movie. And then we split it up, and I do the first couple of pages and he does the second couple of pages, and I email it to him. He puts it together. He does a pass and kind of fixes it and punches it up, gives it back to me. I put on part 3. I do the same thing. And so our outlines take about 4 weeks and the scripts take about 3. And by the time the script is done, it's like a 50th pass because we've each kind of polished it as we've gone. So by the time it's 110 pages and says the end, like I'll do one more pass and he'll do one more pass and we turn it in. So but it took us a long time to sort of figure that out. But I mean, it used to take us 3 months to write a script, and now it takes us about 7 weeks or less.
And has your sensibility grown closer, or have you staked out turf in the relationship over the years? We
will very frequently write the same jokes and lines and dialogue, and he'll send it to me, and I'll say, "Oh man, I just put that in." And so we were always very similar, and now it's 2 halves of the same.
It's a voice.
Brain.
It's a voice that you both make.
We never argue. And if we argue, it's very subtle and it's on paper. So if he writes something that I don't like, I'll take it out. And then if he puts it back in, if I really don't like it, I'll take it out one more time. And if he puts it in a third time, okay, it's in. But we don't do that very often. It's very, because the outline is so figured out. And we figured out the outline together that we don't really, when you're getting into the script, you don't really get to paint yourself in a corner where you have to create anything big. It's really just jokes or scares or stunts or whatever the kind of movie is.
But the scaffolding's in place that you both agree on. So.
And we both have agreed on what the movie is.
Your movie that just blew up, because you were then a working writer and you were a working writing team in Hollywood. You'd done Punch Up on big movies and you'd launched these movies that weren't as big yet. The big movie that you had was Night at the Museum, right?
That was the big one, but before
you did Herbie Got Loaded or something?
Herbie Fully Loaded, and that was it wasn't a bomb, but it was not a hit. They were hoping to set up a franchise.
It was that was Jimmy Fallon in the movie, or
that was Taxi.
Oh, Taxi.
That was Taxi, which tested through the roof. People were at the test screenings of Taxi. It was Queen Latifah and Jimmy Fallon,
right?
And it was a remake of a great Luc Besson French movie. And the tests, people were so excited for the tests of that because everybody loved it. It came out, it bombed. Critics hated it. It didn't make any money at all.
But was it funny?
I thought so. You know, I haven't watched it in 20 years. I've been curious to pop it in again.
But you were happy with it when it came out.
Yeah, I loved it. Loved it. Like, did the press junket and was like, oh, this thing's great. People are going to love it. And it came out and everybody in the world hated it.
No.
Everybody, they hated him. They hated her. They hated it. They hated us. Like, it was just like, it was really, really a disaster. That was Taxi. And that was the first, that was Fox.
After that, did you feel like, oh man, I just want to go?
You got to keep going. Like one of the producers on that, Robert Simon, said, "Yeah, after this, you're a little radioactive for a while." And we're in our 20s and thinking, "Do you live if you're radioactive? Like, are we okay?" But we just kept plugging along. We just kept doing stuff, and we had people who liked us, and we weren't assholes. We were nice to everybody, and so
they liked working with you.
They liked working with us, and that's almost 100% of it is just being a guy people want to work with. But before Night at the Museum was Pacifier with Vin Diesel, and that made $200 million. And that was the thing that really launched us into from rated R, weird adult cult stuff to, oh, these are family movie guys. And
I'm really glad you mentioned that movie because it leads me to the question I was going to get onto, which was the premise was already funny. Like you smile when you hear the premise. The premise of Pacifier was what?
The premise of it's originally the premise was, what if Sound of Music starred Jackie Chan? And we're huge Jackie Chan fans. We heard Jackie Chan loves Sound of Music. We heard it's his favorite movie. It's his first movie he ever saw. And so we thought, okay, what about Jackie Chan? And he's like this tough, badass guy. And suddenly he's got to raise 7 kids. And so it's Jackie Chan, and he's a bodyguard, and the guy he's guarding gets shot. And so the guy's dying in his arms, and he feels terrible. And the guy tells Jackie Chan, please, don't let him kill my kids. And so he goes to America where he's never been, and he moves in this totally suburban house. And suddenly he's got to make dinner for kids and get this kid to ballet lessons and this kid to soccer practice and change a diaper. And that's just a perfect Mr. Mom, but and there's also somebody trying to kill them. Like there's the person who killed the dad is also after them. So it's Jackie Chan with Sound of Music. And we pitched it to Jackie Chan. Jackie Chan loved it. Got to meet Jackie Chan. Jackie Chan did Kung Fu with me at Hollywood Canteen. Wow. Like it was he took my jacket off. Like he was trying to explain something to me. And he was saying like one of his only notes on the script was all the Kung Fu defense, not offense, defense. I'm like, what do you mean? It's like, actually, you don't not throw punches, just protect. Throw a punch at me. And I was like, really? And so we're in this restaurant, and there are people, and everybody there's like, that's Jackie Chan. So everybody's watching us anyway. And so I stood up, and I'm in a suit, and I throw a punch at him, and somehow he takes my jacket off and wraps it around my hand. Well, and I have no idea how I did. And he just, and he's got me. And he's like, see, defense. And I was like, oh, great. And so that's in the movie. And so he did it, and he was going to be in it, and Disney loved him. And then Medallion came out, and The Tuxedo came out. And those were big financial disappointments, and they said, okay, no Jackie Chan movies. What about Vin Diesel? And then Vin Diesel ended up in it, and it was a huge, huge hit.
No defense, it's all offense.
No defense, and it has a duck in it. The family has a pet duck, which makes no sense. The duck, people love the duck. In the Jackie Chan version, like he's starting to like the kids, and he's trying to show them something, and he's like, I got you guys a duck, and he brings a duck to the dinner table, and they're like, oh, and he grabs the duck by the head and grabs a meat cleaver, and they go, no. And so they end up stuck with this pet duck. They kept the duck. And so now it's just, they have a pet duck.
It's nonsensical.
Now they just have a pet duck.
Right.
But that stayed. But it was a huge, people.
The duck tested really
well. It did. The duck tested great. Like our one executive, John Glickman, was like, leave the duck. I don't care what you take out. Leave the duck. All right. They got it, one of those suburban families with a pet duck.
So that
launched us into like we're the real deal now. And that suddenly people were coming to us with all kinds of stuff, and mostly family stuff. But that was the thing that opened the door for, I think that opened the door for Herbie Fully Loaded. I believe that was before Herbie, if my math is right.
That was the Lindsay Lohan?
The Lindsay Lohan, Herbie Fully Loaded. Swear to God, that script is great. I swear to God, that script is great.
Yeah, Herbie Fully Loaded was the next movie that you did.
Yeah, that basically Disney said, okay, what do you want to do? And we said, Herbie. We love the old franchise. I grew up on those movies. I said, Herbie, do Herbie, and make it as real as Fast and the Furious. And that's not what happened. But that's what we pitched, and that's what we tried to write. So there was
no Dean Jones? Whoa.
There was no, what if you did it? Like, and our pitch was, what if the car never drives itself? Because if a car really drove itself, it would be world news immediately, and people would freak out and be terrified, and the government would take it. And so what if, when it wants to go to the race, it just gets stuck going left? And what if when it's trying to get the girl to kiss the guy, its horn won't go? We pitched, it's always a question, is Herbie really magic? But it didn't turn out that way.
What happens when it doesn't turn out that way? I mean that. Like, tell me all the ways that, a perfect sphere of an idea like that can be perverted along the way.
Well, I think sometimes everything can be great and the movie still sucks. I think sometimes you can have a great script and a great crew and a great everybody, and it just something happens and the movie doesn't work, and it worked on paper. That movie in particular, we had an executive who wasn't there for the pitch, who didn't know that the thing we pitched was, what if you never know the car's definitely magic? What if it's always explainable, always? And so you kept it in this world. But you still got the car. By the end, it's racing against Jeff Gordon in NASCAR because it's a really fast car. There was one executive who no longer is in the industry who really didn't get that or like it and kept fighting. And by the end, Herbie smiles. Like by the end of it, the bumper smiles at Lindsay Lohan. And it was one executive who wanted the car to smile and was like, little kids aren't going to like this. Like Herbie should fart. And we're like, and it just, she wore us down until she fired us. And then 26 other writers came after us. And eventually Herbie farted and Herbie smiled. And one of the things that we pitched, one of the opening line of the pitch to Disney was, this Herbie movie is not going to have Herbie in a junkyard with a big fat guy with a big mustache saying, I'm going to get that little car. And that's literally how the movie starts. And the pitch was, this is not going to be that movie. And that's the first scene of the movie that came out. And we got fired, and 26 other writers came in and did it.
When that happens, I I always hear about this, like a writer taking his name off a project, or somebody wanting to remove their name from, it's not always a writer, it's a director or whomever. Did you have that sense that, you know what, I just don't want anything to do with this anymore? Or are you told from a business standpoint, hey, don't let your head get away from you on this? Or
I think that, I don't know how often that really happens, because you don't get paid if your name's not on it.
You don't see a lot of Alan Smithies.
Yeah, I think that's like a legend.
The Alan Smithy thing is
but I don't know if that really ever. It's crazy too, because the other thing is, people know it's not your fault, and if people know, or if it is your fault, you walk it off and try to do better next time.
Sure.
But you don't get paid unless your name is on it. And I just wrote Baywatch, which I did not take my name off of. It's story by, so there were 7 writer credits, but mine is one of them, story by me and Tom. And we didn't take our name off of it because it lets you know, okay, they were doing something. They were, that year they did a big giant rock movie, and that's something, even if it sucks. Sure. And when people ask us about it, we say, yep, they didn't use our stuff, but we got story by credit. It is what it is.
And have you guys ever had to arbitrate?
Every time.
Really?
Every single time. Herbie, the good ones and the bad ones, you arbitrate. The Night of the Museums we didn't, because there weren't any other writers on the first one. Uh-huh. But by the second one and third one, we arbitrated. So every time. And it's a nightmare. Arbitrating is more exhausting than writing the movie.
Now, those of us who are not writers in Hollywood, explain to us what I think we know, but tell us anyway.
When you write a movie, the studio, and usually in a movie there are more than one writer. Unless you're James Cameron and you wrote it, then it's going to have more than one writer. Either there were scripts before you were hired based on the premise, or if it's something that you pitch, directors will come in and do a pass, and like Vin Diesel has his guys that come in and do a pass. Most movie stars have guys who come in and do a pass, and somebody at the studio says, this needs heart, so let's bring in Scott Frank to do a pass. And so there's always multiple writers, almost always. And so at the end of the process, the studio decides whose name is on the poster and whose name is in it. And sometimes they say you, and sometimes they don't have you on there at all, even though you started it. And sometimes it's 8 guys. And so when that happens, every writer usually who wrote every draft, 100 guys come out of the woodwork and say, hey, I wrote that. Hey, Herbie wins a race. That's mine. Herbie won a race in my draft that I wrote 2 years ago. And so you write a statement. The statements are like 15 pages. You have to argue that you created a story, setting, character, dialogue, and original idea. And you have to write like a thesis paper on those things. And at the end, it's a totally arbitrary process. At the end, they take your name off of your statement, and they take all the names off of the script, even though everybody at the Writers Guild knows that Lennon Grant wrote Herbie Fully Loaded. It's, it's been in the papers and stuff. And then 3 writers randomly drafted from the guild read all of the statements. Sometimes they do not read the script. They read all of the statements and then make a decision on who gets credit. And it's crazy.
Right. And it could be a guy who's gotten screwed over before and he's bitter now.
It could be somebody who hates you. It could be somebody. The only rule is that it's not somebody who worked on this script. And it's insane. Every writer I know says there should be, the guild should have a team of lawyers who do it. They should have a team of creative rights lawyers, and you go to that team, and 3 of them read the scripts and make a decision.
That would seem to make the most sense.
It totally makes sense.
It's the most bitter I know. So many writers I know, it's the thing they are most bitter about is that process.
Well, then when you heard Ben say that you had to do it every time, though.
Every time. And there are lawyers. You can pay a lawyer to do it for you, but you still have to prepare the statements yourself. But you can hire lawyers who advise you, hey, push this, don't say this. But it's all. But the end of it, it's totally random. It's like 3 people decide, and they don't read the script, and they don't know the Night at the Museum 3. We did not get any credit on. We are not on it. Our name is not on it. And so
what?
And so our argument was, and so they said your name is not on it because anything that is in the original source material, you can't count that you wrote. So we wrote.
So Theodore Roosevelt.
We didn't write that.
Right.
Even though we wrote every line that Theodore Roosevelt says in that movie, that's based on characters created by. So we get that credit based on characters created by. But because we already wrote Theodore Roosevelt, even though we wrote all of his dialogue in that movie, we don't get credit. So we don't have any. We didn't write much of that movie, but we came in and said, hey, they go to the London Museum. This is going on. We came up with a premise of it. Sure. But because in previous movies, a bad guy is trying to get the tablet of Akhman Ra, that goes under based on characters created by. So we didn't get anything. Like Tom and I were pretty shocked by that one. We were pretty.
That's insane.
We were pretty. Well, wait a minute. And we would have arguments of like the argument I had with the Writers Guild. So you're saying if I make a hamburger for you, if I put the meat in and the bun and the mustard and everything, and I hand it to you, I didn't make that hamburger because somebody else had already made a hamburger. And the guild said, yes, that's exactly right. That's a perfect analogy. Wow. It was just like, oh, that one shocked us because we have big chunks of that are ours. And it was just.
And they're like, can we take credit for that analogy?
Yeah, exactly. Like, nope, somebody else already made that analogy. But that one was, and it is what it is. You walk it off. But we were really, one was a little.
That's a tough one to walk off.
That was a tough one to walk off.
Well, because and I'm glad you mentioned Night at the Museums. And so Night at the Museum was another huge movie. It sounds like in the chronology that you've just established, you did Herbie and then Night at the Museum, even though the prison movie came out in between.
Yeah, prison movie, we wrote it first, but it didn't come out for years.
Right.
And years
so
and
in
years.
terms of your creative.
Yeah.
So the Night at the Museum is, again, a simple premise that makes you smile,
It's based on a Belgian children's book that's about as long as Goodnight Moon. Like it's a really simple, it's like a 10-page, big picture on one page. And so when you see the guard asleep, don't wake him up because he was up all night. Like, it's this really simple children's book. But when Fox showed it to us, we said, that's the most brilliant, simple, great idea. We said, we totally get it. We said, every kid wonders at night, does it move? It's such a clear, simple, fun license to do anything, controlled, it's all under one roof. It's got a simple rule. It's only at night. That was really, really a fun thing to do. But that we didn't come up with the premise. That was based on a kid's book. And we created all the characters and everything that happens. But the simple grain of the idea that what if everything in a museum comes to life every night is just, that was.
But you wrote that movie with Tom.
I wrote that with Tom, yeah. And I just recently showed it to my 5-year-old, and that was a real treat. Like my 5-year-old loves it. And I was like, this is kind of long, and there's a lot of grown-ups, and my 5-year-old loves the Easter at Highland guy and the tiki. And it was just, that's great.
Oh, wow.
I'm really proud of that one. Like, I think most of my movies, some of them are bad, but that one I'm just totally proud of it. I think it's a solid family entertainment movie.
And great performances,
Somebody good. And it boosted the attendance of every natural history museum in America, and they've never gone down. It's just such a cool, I'm very, very proud to be associated with that one.
I was personally disappointed because there were a lot of news people in the movie, and then I noticed that I wasn't any of them.
I have nothing to do with casting.
No, I know.
I have nothing. They don't even let us on set.
I need to get a director in for that. But explain that, because here it is, your movie, the whole thing. But really, once you've delivered it, now it's up to the director. And
I tell this to young writers, you just got to swallow it. Like, after you sell the movie, you sold it. It's not yours. If you sell a car, you don't get to come in and tell them how to steer it and when to wash it. And it's you sell it, and it is gone. And sometimes, not often, sometimes they'll want you around to fix something that's not working, or the director will have an idea and they'll call you and kind of, can you change this scene to make it like this? But they don't want you on set. They don't want you near. They don't care what you think. You've sold them the plans, and now they're going to do it.
But don't you, because particularly in this case, so here's a movie that you and Tom did, you've done the entire film. It's a really cool premise. It's shot, and it's a big movie. Don't you say, hey, can we maybe drop by? And was there any of that?
Well, they let us, the second one, we're the Wright brothers. So we were on.
No. The second one you're there, but the first one I'm talking about.
Oh, the first one it's just you accept. You accept nobody wants you there.
Right.
It's a TV, the writer is God. TV, the writer controls everything. He hires the director. And movies, it's just the opposite. The writer's the very first people that they fire and replace. You're so replaceable.
You are the drummers.
We're nothing. We're nothing.
Wow.
Yeah. And it's you. I was very angry about that the first 5 years. But then after a few years, you're like, all right, pay's good. Let's on to the next one. Hopefully they'll call us.
And well, with the sequels, by then you as a performer had established yourself, right, on television with Reno.
Yeah, that's true.
So it just seems as though, I don't know if that matters, but
I don't think so. They it's so funny when you talk about when in movie meetings and you talk about TV, they have no idea what you're talking about. Like, they don't talk about TV. They don't it's very interesting. But that and for the Night of the Museum, we were contractually obligated. They had to bring us the sequel, and we had to at least get a shot at pitching it.
I see.
Like, it wasn't guaranteed that we got to write it, but they had to listen to our pitch first. So, and the first one was great, and they loved us. So we did first drafts of all of the sequels.
So that was another hit, and then there was a third Night at the Museum movie.
Yeah, they waited a really long time and did a third.
on the Earth.
We worked on it for years. Yeah. We worked on it for years and years and years. We did 20 drafts of that thing. I went to London for 2 weeks because it's set in the Tower of London and the British Museum. So I went for 2 weeks and just went to the Tower Museum every day, which was really, really cool. And they didn't use a word that we wrote, but we wrote, not exaggerating, 20 drafts. Some of them very, very different than each other. One of them, Richard III was the bad guy. One of them, like Rowan Atkinson, was Jack the Ripper, and that was the bad guy.
Wow.
Like a big, very different incarnations of it, and it was really fun. And they didn't use any of that stuff.
Can you use any of that stuff, that, for example, that you've just mentioned? I just know in that mind of yours, all that stuff that was on the page, you could balkanize it or excerpt it or rework it or something. Do you ever do that, or could you do that? Or
we've taken little jokes, nothing big, but but if we had come up with a really funny sequence that nobody uses, we'll use it. I think we thought of a bad guy once that we sort of wrote the script, sold it, never got made, and so we sort of use that bad guy in another thing, or little speeches. If they don't make it into something, if it's good, we'll kind of remember it. It's like, as a writer, like, for every we pitch about 5 things for everything that you sell, and then for everything that you sell, we'll write 6 that don't get made for every one that gets made. So we've written 50 scripts, and not specs, but scripts that a studio bought and gave us notes and these fully developed scripts. So it's we have a huge trunk of stuff, but you work most of the time on stuff that never sees the light of day. That's just the gig. It's
just a wild thing to consider, because most of us aren't in professions where that's the case.
You have to enjoy it. You have to get over the fact that you have to not think, boy, I hope this gets made, which you do the first 5 or 6 years. But you have to get over that. You have to enjoy writing in of itself.
You have to believe that a script in and of itself is a thing.
It's not, though. It's I wouldn't go that far, because I don't think a script. It's like an architectural plan. Nobody goes to the museum and looks at architectural plans. I think if it doesn't get made, you put it in the shredder. You got to forget about it. But you just have to enjoy. You can't dread getting up and writing from 9 to 5 every day. You have to like doing that.
The process.
Because the process, it's all about the process. Because the chance of your movie getting made is is slim. Even if you're hot and the movie's great and the studio loves the movie, the chance of it getting to the screen is a slim chance.
Now, you then went on, you did this $1 Jillion Properties. What is that?
That's it was on CISO, and it's Reno set in the world of those like house flippers.
I love that.
Those.
I can't believe I didn't see it. I'm sorry.
We went for 4 seasons, really talented cast. It wasn't our idea. Kulap Vilisach came to us with it and said, how do you do Reno? And we're old friends with her. She's like an Upright Citizens Brigade chick. And she came to us with the concept, and we sort of showed her how you do the structure and what you need and like how you overshoot and all that stuff. And so we produced it with her and helped her cast and did all, but it's hers. It's her idea and her thing. We just sort of gave her like the one-on-one on how you do an improv show. And it turned out great. And the cast is all really, really talented and funny. And it was on CISO, and I think it would have gone for a long time. But CISO went away.
Yeah, that's the problem, huh?
Terrible name, CISO. We said, don't name it CISO. How about Universal Comedy?
How about anything else?
How about anything else?
CISO?
So confusing. Yeah.
But you were in that as well.
We played, it's about a team of Beverly Hills brokers, and they would sell celebrities, sometimes playing themselves and sometimes not, houses. And Tom and I were the evil Armenian Glendale brokers who would come and threaten them and tell them to stay out of Glendale, and with big unibrows, and it was fun. I directed a bunch of them too. I directed like a lot of the.
So you're saying you can't see those now, or you can still?
I don't know. They must be out there somewhere.
Yeah.
I don't know what happened to the CISO stuff. I think they were trying to sell their whole library, which must have happened eventually, but I don't know.
So your world now is continuing to write and continuing to create in the same way that it was 10 years ago, or has it changed?
It's pretty much the same. I don't like, and it was a conscious decision after I had a kid that I didn't really want to do production for a while. I didn't want to get up at 5 and be back home at 8 and be gone, because Reno, you left before the sun was up, and the last one's there, and so for 4 months I wouldn't have seen a kid, and so I said, I'm just going to write. And so now I since then, so that's been 5 years. So I haven't done any physical production since then, which means no TV, because you can't really do TV unless you're willing to be there on the ground, the boots on the ground, and run the show. So I've just been writing screenplays since Abigail was born.
Do you still write them with Tom, or do you have to do a lot of stuff on your own?
We do both. We do. Right now we're together. We just turned in a draft of a Cannonball Run for Warner Brothers, which was great. We'll see how it goes. It's out to directors, and then on my own.
Is that like is it a mad world kind of thing, or not?
Yeah, really? It's good. It's fun. Like, I love those old movies. I was like the sweet spot. I was 10 years old when those came out. And
sure.
Reynolds.
Hal Needham.
Hal Needham, yeah. And so we get to meet those old producers who produced the old movies, and they're just great. So we wrote the whole first draft of this thing, and it's an illegal street race from Miami to San Francisco. That's it. And so it's the people, and it's a $10 million prize. Basically, a guy like an Elon Musk guy has a smart car, and he makes a bet with another guy that he could beat him in a race, that a real truck driver can beat your smart car to San Francisco. And then people hear about it. And so other people kind of like join into the race because they think it's a $10 million, any winner wins the race. And so it snowballs into this thing. We turned in this draft, and the original Hal Needham's friend, producer guy, this old gray-haired dude, he like read it, and the only note he had was like, we have a scene where a girl is stowing away in one of the hero's cars, and she's in the back seat of his Bugatti. And he says to us, Bugattis don't have back seats. And that was it. That was the note from that guy.
It's a good note.
Yeah, it's a good note. Good to know. And then I'm doing a thing with DreamWorks right now, an animated movie with DreamWorks. And then I'm writing I do little horror movies, which is super fun. I've done 2 of them, and Blumhouse has made them both. And one of them turned out great, and one of them turned out terrible. But that's fun. I do horror movies on my own because I love horror movies.
Do you direct them as well?
No, just write them.
What's your favorite horror movie?
I could boil it down to 5 or so. I don't know if I have a favorite one.
I'll tell you why I asked this question, because I don't like horror movies. They scare the shit. No, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
I respect them as a genre enormous, and good ones are great cinema as well as. I'm just saying that they scare me. Like, I don't do well. I'm very sensitive, and
he shouldn't read You Are Going to Prison, by the way.
No, it's very scary. You don't like that? They scare me too, but you don't like that?
Maybe
Shining is one of the best.
The Shining's great, and it works on your head.
Exorcist is probably one of the best.
Okay, I agree with that, and I love loved The
You don't like
Exorcist.
slasher films, is what you're saying.
I don't like torture movies.
Oh, I don't
guess.
either. I like ghost movies. I don't like guys running after a girl with a machete.
Thank you. That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I don't like those.
I can't take
Halloween
torture.
is great, and that's one of those. But that's more suspenseful than just like running after somebody with a machete.
Would you consider Aliens a horror movie or a...
I think Alien is a horror movie.
Alien, the first one.
Alien's the first one.
Yeah, that
I
was
think
the
that's
one.
a horror movie in space. Yeah.
Right,
And then
I
the
agree.
second
Okay.
one's like an action movie. Yeah. Have you seen The Uninvited? Old 1946. Ray Milland moves into this big spooky house in England.
No, that sounds interesting.
Uninvited. It's great.
I'll check that.
You have to get over. There's a weird thing at the beginning you have to get over, which is he's on holiday with his sister in England, and they run into this big spooky house. They go, I wonder why this place is so cheap. And they buy this big haunted house. And so he and his sister move in there together, which is pretty weird. But you get over that, and it's a really good spooky ghost movie. Black and white. It feels like a film noir. It's really good and scary.
How far out of your pantheon is Get Out?
Oh, I liked Get Out a lot. I thought I get to read the script of it before, and in reading the script, I thought, boy, if he can pull this off, it will be great. And he did. I thought he did. It really.
I thought it was cool. It was like the way that he fitted into the true template of a horror movie, like the same way that Book of Mormon fit that true template of a Broadway musical. I thought that was very cool.
I was like,
to
boy,
play by the rules.
I was like, if he could pull this off, it's going to be great. And I think at some point he was not going to direct it. He was just going to write it.
Really?
And I think halfway through pre-production, he said, I think I need to direct this thing. And they said, sure.
That's the part that rarely happens.
Yeah, totally. That's Blumhouse. Well, it was like $3 million. It's like a super tiny budget.
Right.
So that's the good thing about horror movies is you can write these little tiny movies and Get Out, it's made like $250 million, but you can have the freedom to take chances with a new director because it's only $3 million. And I also like that means like in the 70s when I was a kid, people were scared of sharks and they made Jaws, and now people are scared of white people. That's
even cheaper.
Yeah. Right. I'm scared of white people.
The Great White Demon.
Yeah. The Changeling. The
Changeling's terrific.
George C. Scott.
That's the one.
Yeah. It's a good horror movie.
Yeah,
that might be my favorite horror movie. I really, really like that movie.
Well, there's one I'm thinking of that I know you liked, and it's John Carpenter's The Thing. Great
movie.
Yeah.
Great movie. And the original of that is great too.
Yes.
The old Howard Hawks one is really cool.
Right. It just, when you think about what they did with The Thing, and they didn't have any special effects.
There's no CGI.
Right, CGI, I mean.
Yeah.
It was all puppetry and just unreal. It's so scary.
Such a great movie.
And the music. I mean, I think the music's so key in these films. Well, some of these are psychological thriller type things, I would say. It's the torture movies. You're right, Josh.
Yeah,
those are the ones I can't sit through.
I don't get those that much. I don't. They're not that entertaining to me. I like ghost movies. I like something spooky. Some spooky ghost is in your house. I like those.
I'm trying to think. Have you done? Well, I guess Night at the Museum is as close to ghosts that come to life. But
my horror movies are. My Jezebel is. Jezebel, The Veil. Don't go see The Veil. Don't. It's on Netflix. They're both on Netflix. Don't look at The Veil. The Veil turned out bad. Sometimes it just doesn't work. But Jezebel, I'm pretty proud of Jezebel. It's a good little horror movie, and it's a Blumhouse, and I think it turned out great.
It's hard to make horror funny, though, right?
American Werewolf in London, I think, is
that's true.
Really funny. Like when it's funny, it's really funny, and when it's scary, it's very satisfying. It's gory, but I don't mind the gore in that one. But that's a good. I don't know if there's any other ones. But
Evil Dead is.
Evil Dead's really funny and weird and scary. Yeah.
Did you ever see Special Delivery?
No.
Or is it what is it? The Santa movie, Special Delivery, or
I don't know.
It's a horror. It's a Norwegian film or Scandinavian film.
Oh, I think I've seen that. I haven't seen it.
It's Santa. I always watch it at Christmas time, but obviously I don't watch it enough that I can remember the title. I think it's called Special Delivery. It's weird and funny and.
What is it? Dead Alive. That's like an early Peter Jackson. The goriest movie you'll ever see. Yeah. And it's like a crazy zombie slasher movie that he made that's pretty funny. That's a weird, like he made it, I think it's like a second movie or something. Like he made Meet the Feebles and then Dead Alive. And Dead Alive is a super gross zombie movie. That's great. And it feels like a Peter Jackson movie.
So your world now is being a dad and writing at home pretty much?
I have an office in my house. I drop off Abby at school. I have a nanny for the 1-year-old, and I write from about 10 to 4, and that's it.
Is your wife in the industry in any way?
Yeah, she's an actress.
So does she read your stuff, or do you bounce stuff off of her, or not really?
Sometimes it's always a bad idea because you don't want to know. You would say, hey, what do you think of this? Yeah, I don't want to know what you think. You don't want anybody to really tell you what they think of it unless they go, it's great.
Right.
And even then you're like, but really tell me. And then
Yeah,
really
but
tell you
don't really tell me.
Yeah, so we sometimes do it. I'll do that very early and stuff. And I'll say, is this something? And I'll run a big broad concept. And she'll very often point out why it's not a good idea.
Where did you meet your wife?
Reno 911. She was a one-eyed hooker, and she came in, and it was she's great. We were very good friends for a long time, and we've been married for 7 years, I guess.
Right.
But we met in like 2003 on season 1 of Reno, and she's awesome.
Congrats on everything. Just so cool on the family more than anything. It's really great.
Thanks for having me.
All
This
right.
was super fun.
Ben Garant. Thank you.
Yay, Mark Thompson.
Hope you enjoyed our conversation with Ben Garant. Thank you for being here and for all the ways you show us love. Until next time, bye-bye.
Oh, okay. Let me just, It's just something. There we go. Yeah. I want to thank you for all the ways that you support my friends on the Edge podcast. And if you haven't already, why don't you show your support and subscribe? What's the matter with you? Go to Edge Show. Oh, shit, it's Edge Dash. What's with the dash? Stupid. All right, I want to thank you for all the ways that you support my friends on the Edge podcast. Show your support and leave something on their website, edge-show.com. Stupid. Why is there a dash?
Get more of The Edge on Stitcher and iTunes, or go to our website, edge-show.com.